5 years since I first joined the Coalition for Property Rights in November of 2004. And Doug told me at that time that it had been about 6 months or so since they'd held their last issues forum. And we hold these events biannually, or sometimes 3 times a year in Orlando, and they attract up to 250 business and community leaders. And so he said, well, Carol, we're hiring you, but we haven't had one in a while, and so we'd like you to do one before the end of the quarter. Now, this is November 15th. And I said, I said, Doug, that means that I have approximately, 2 or 3 weeks to pull something off, because we've got to put it on the first week of December. And so I got on the phone and I started calling prominent national experts. And I happened to get on the phone with a gentleman who I had called to simply ask him for other referrals, and his name was Chip Mueller of the Institute for Justice, and they litigated the infamous Kelo case. So I brought him to Florida in December before that case was heard. But Carrie Gaylord made the mistake of calling me on my first week, and it was the day after Doug had just laid this in my lap and said, I want you to organize a 200-person luncheon. And Carrie called and introduced himself, and he goes, well, just let me know if I can ever help. And so I said, Carrie, I've got a luncheon to sponsor. Luncheon's in 3 weeks. You on board? And to Carrie's credit, he said, absolutely. Tell me what you need. What can I do to help you be successful in your new role? And so that was the friendship that Carrie and I started that day. And we laid the groundwork in those few weeks for Florida to have the strongest eminent domain protections in the country. I'm going to run through about 200 years of property rights theory in about 3 minutes here, so just bear with me, but we're going to go quick because we've got a lot of speakers in the program that we want you to be able to hear from today. Let's hope this works when I click. Great. Well, basically, if we're going to start talking about property rights, we need to start at the beginning. Where did they come from? In America, property rights were part of the foundation of the American fabric. In every discussion of the original Constitution, and even the problems that we were having under the English king, stem around property. There was property being seized, property being taxed, and property that could not be used for individual benefit. This is what kicked off the revolution. It was a property issue. Plain and simple. In all of your seats, we also have copies of this PowerPoint so that you can follow along, and I'm just going to skip for you. The reason we have the form of democracy that we have, the reason why we have a constitution is to limit government and to protect private property rights. Property rights are mentioned not just one, but 3 amendments in the U.S. Constitution. That says something, doesn't it? They were important then, and it's strange that they're less important now. The philosophical foundation of property rights is also important. These are God-given rights, and I kind of call it a 3-legged stool: life, liberty, and property. You cannot protect your life or your liberty if you don't have economic security. And economic security you get by simply being able to go to work every day and retain your earnings. If not, there's a popular phrase, you're working for the man. It's something where you don't have liberty. If you don't have assets, and you can't make the choice to change jobs, you can't make the choice to change locations or geographies. It's something where if you don't have basic wealth, and I'm talking about just basic wealth, of being able to make those free decisions, then you're not free. I will also go back and say that it's very, very important in this new age that we live in the new age of growing government, that we understand that there is a moral foundation for property rights and for the freedoms we enjoy in America. Because there's a new movement and a new dynamic that is seeking to substitute that for government. And so I just think that's important. Secondly, for those of you who've gotten through the 1,000 pages of Wealth of Nations, I've summarized it in a paragraph. Basically, nations that will protect property rights and have the rule of law are 10 times or exponentially more prosperous than those that do not, period. It is why, when we talk about the World Trade Organizations, and they're talking about how do we bring third world economies, including large nations like Mexico, out in China, what do? We give them property rights. You want to protect females in Africa from abuse and victimization, you give them property rights. China actually has in its constitution, because they're working to bring billions of people out of their lower classes, they actually have property rights in the the Chinese constitution now. I think many of you might have seen a year or so ago about a lady who had been developed all around, and she had a little house in China, and she was refusing to sell. It was called, I think, the tree house or the stone house. And it was basically, she said, I read that I have property rights in the Chinese constitution, and I'm not selling. I don't have to. That would never have occurred 50 years ago, 20 years ago, but it's happening there, and it causes us to question what's going on here in America. The basic principle of property rights, why do they matter? Our individual liberty and individual economic opportunity is founded on our ability to own and acquire assets and maintain property, real property as well. Property rights built Florida. We're all here today because people came, exercised the property rights, and built basic wealth. From the cattleman to Henry Flagler, it was about property and it was about having opportunity. One of the things that I referenced, we have a disturbing trend in America. For the past 20 years, at least in Florida and across the nation, we're now, it's acceptable to talk about socialism and open discussions. When I started CPR 4 years ago, I recognized the trend towards socialism then, but when I addressed Rotaries and civic clubs, I couldn't say it. People weren't open to it. They thought, well, no, you're radical. Guess what? Socialism is here, but the most important thing to remember, the idea of the difference between capitalism, socialism, and other forms that we don't even want to go touch, it's all about property. It's who controls the property. And the shift that we've had is people have come in under public purpose, and they're taking control of property. Think about your land use rights 50 or 100 years ago in America. Think about what they are today. How many permits do you have to pull for how many different venues? Well, guess what? Do you control your property, or does another entity? And that, my friends, is something where when you hear socialism, or you hear communism, or you hear capitalism discussed, it's all about who controls property. And I think that's being lost in the public dynamic. A lot of times when I'm speaking to local groups, I tell you, it's difficult to define what a property right is because there are a lot of them. It's basically your freedom to use your property as you see fit and to your inherent benefit. But I tell you, what you see when you've lost one, it's called a permit. You're seeking government's permission to use your land. It may be to put in a set of French doors because you watched Extreme Makeover okay, on TV. But those little things that now require a permit, how many of you here are part of a business entity? When I registered CPR 5 or 6 years ago, I had to go in and sign a piece of paper, and I scratched it out, of course, but it said it is a privilege to do business in the municipality of Orlando. I scratched it out and I put no, it's a government requirement. It is not a privilege for us to go to work every day to seek to earn a benefit from our labor. And that's kind of what's been going on. And again, I'm going to move kind of quickly here. But at the bottom of that last slide, it basically says regulations are a strategy being supported by environmentalists and people of a liberal ideological doctrine to basically take control of property. It's incrementalism. Rather than come out, I know we've got some eminent domain attorneys here in the audience, okay? Everybody knows eminent domain, they take it all or in part. Regulations, they're seeking the same end. They're seeking to diminish your use, but they don't want to pay for it. It's a postponement. It's a deferral. So they can devalue their property and they can get it cheaper later, and they can afford to. And I think it's very important that people realize that regulation is a tool. It's a tactic of another side. And that's something that you don't hear very often of when you talk about property rights. There are people that go to work every day who want to build their American dream. But what about the other side? Well, I see the other side in my work. I see them in public hearings. And what they're pushing is level of encroachment of government because of their lobbying effort, because of their activism, because of their calls. We have now seen in Florida, under the guise of growth management,